Summer 1456. A powerful sultan, known across the world as the Conqueror, arrived at the gates of a battered European city. Behind him stood one of the strongest armies ever assembled, and giant cannons that could bring down walls in minutes. Inside the fortress of Belgrade, things looked hopeless. The city's defenses were crumbling. Their king had abandoned them. Only a determined general remained, rallying farmers, priests, and a few hired fighters. They were heavily outnumbered and poorly armed. Outside the walls, over 100,000 Ottoman troops prepared to wipe Belgrade off the map. But when the first cannonballs hit, something unexpected happened. The defenders held firm. Faith stood up to firepower, and fear gave way to fierce resistance. This wasn't just another siege. It became a turning point. A small band of unlikely heroes stood up to an empire, and history took a different path. To understand how unlikely this victory was, you have to know who was leading the attack. Sultan Mehmed II. Just 3 years earlier, in 1453, he had done the unthinkable. He captured Constantinople at just 21 years old. Constantinople had resisted invaders for over 1,000 years. It was the heart of the Byzantine Empire, a symbol of Christian power. But Mehmed used strategy and massive cannons to bring its walls down. The fall of that city shocked Europe. He was no longer just a ruler. He became known as Mehmed the Conqueror. He believed it was his destiny to build a new empire from Constantinople. But to expand westward into Europe, he had to pass through one key fortress, Belgrade. Located at the meeting point of two major rivers, the Danube and the Sava, Belgrade wasn't just a city. It was the gateway to Central Europe. It had blocked the Ottomans for years. Mehmed knew that to reach the heart of Europe, he had to take this city first. So, he brought his full military strength with him. His army included tens of thousands of trained soldiers, possibly between 60,000 and 70,000, supported by elite janissaries raised from childhood to fight. These troops were disciplined, ruthless, and feared across the continent. Backing them were cavalry units, a massive supply system, and most importantly, artillery. Mehmed had around 300 cannons with him, including the massive siege guns that had helped him take Constantinople. Some stories even say these cannons were forged from melted church bells taken from that city, a powerful symbol of conquest and fear. As the Ottoman forces marched toward Belgrade, their goal was clear. Everyone in Europe watched and waited, fearing the worst, but they had no idea what was coming. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Hungary was in chaos. Leaders argued instead of acting. The young king was tied up in court politics. The nobles didn't want to fund an army. No one seemed ready to stop the Ottoman advance, except for two very different men. One was John Hunyadi, a Hungarian noble and seasoned military leader. He had spent years fighting the Ottomans and knew how serious the threat was. But without support from the nobles, he had to raise a small force on his own. He gathered about 10,000 trained fighters and loyal knights, but it was a tiny army compared to Mehmed's. The other was a priest, John of Capistrano. He was a 70-year-old Franciscan friar from Italy who had originally come to Hungary to speak out against religious divisions. But when he saw the danger Mehmed posed, he took action. Capistrano wasn't strong or young, but his passion was powerful. When the nobles refused to act, he turned to the common people. He traveled from town to town, delivering passionate sermons. Many people didn't even understand the Latin he spoke, but they felt his energy and responded. He called for a people crusade, not led by kings or knights, but by everyday citizens. Farmers, blacksmiths, and students grabbed whatever weapons they could find and followed his call to defend their homeland. Together, Hunyadi and Capistrano formed an unlikely alliance. One a battle-hardened general, the other a fiery preacher. One used military strategy, the other inspired faith. Their combined forces, soldiers and ordinary citizens, became Belgrade's only hope. Capistrano's appeal stirred something deep. Thousands answered, far more than anyone expected. They weren't trained soldiers. They came with farming tools, household weapons, or nothing but courage. What united them was their desire to protect their land and faith. They gathered under Hunyadi's command, forming a massive but disorganized force. For the experienced general, it was both a blessing and a problem. He needed the numbers, But these were not trained warriors. How could farmers with pitchforks hold off elite Ottoman fighters? How would they stand against cannons? Hunyadi and Capistrano led their groups separately but shared the same goal. Hunyadi focused on tactics with his professional troops. Capistrano became the soul of the camp, holding services, encouraging the people, and reminding them why they had come. Despite their lack of armor or training, these new fighters had strong beliefs. They truly thought they were fighting for a holy cause, and that belief gave them courage. When Mehmed's army reached Belgrade in early July 1456, this strange alliance was all that stood in the way. Inside Belgrade's walls, Hunyadi's brother-in-law Mihai Shalagi led a garrison of about 5,000 to 7,000 men. Outside, along the riverbanks, Capistrano's makeshift crusaders joined Hunyadi's smaller, trained force. Altogether, they had between 25,000 and 30,000 defenders against a far larger Ottoman force. The siege began in early July. A historian of the time wrote that the Ottomans' white tent spread across the fields like snow. On the Danube River, about 200 Ottoman ships blocked any chance of reinforcements reaching the city. Belgrade was surrounded, cut off, and bracing for war. As Mehmed's forces surrounded Belgrade, his engineers dug siege lines and positioned heavy artillery. On July 4th, the bombardment began. Day and night, massive cannons pounded the city's medieval walls. The defenders did what they could to repair the damage, but it was a losing fight. The outer walls started to collapse, just like they had in Constantinople. The pressure was immense. The sound of cannon fire was constant. Hunyadi knew he had to act. His top priority was to break the Ottoman blockade on the Danube River. Without it, reinforcements couldn't reach the city. On July 14th, Hunyadi launched a surprise naval attack with small, quick ships. After a fierce 5-hour battle, his forces broke through. Several Ottoman ships were destroyed and dozens captured. The path to Belgrade opened. He rushed reinforcements and supplies into the city, giving the defenders a much-needed boost. But the fight was far from over. Mehmed still had his elite janissaries and cannons. The shelling continued with greater force. Eventually, parts of the wall gave way, exposing the city. On July 21st, Mehmed launched a full assault. Under darkness, janissaries stormed through the breaches, reaching the lower city. Street fighting broke out, and the defenders were slowly pushed back. At one point, a Turkish soldier raised the Sultan's flag over a bastion, signaling that the city might soon fall. But Hunyadi responded quickly. He ordered fires lit in the narrow streets, using oil and debris. The flames split the invading force in two, isolating the troops already inside. Trapped and cut off, the janissaries had to fight alone, street by street. The defenders fought fiercely. One Hungarian soldier, Titus Dagovic, reportedly dragged the flag bearer off the wall to prevent the city from falling. By morning, the attack had failed. The Ottomans were forced to retreat with heavy losses. Belgrade still stood, but was on the edge. Hunyadi ordered no one to leave. They had to rebuild quickly before another assault came. Then something unexpected happened. A few of Capistrano's crusaders began taunting nearby Ottoman troops. Though they were just peasants, they refused to back down. When cavalry tried to scatter them, more crusaders joined in. A full-blown, unauthorized charge began. Capistrano tried to stop them, but changed his mind when he saw their determination. Holding a crucifix, he led them forward, shouting, "The Lord who began this will see it through." From the walls, Hunyadi watched as the strategy began to unravel. But when he saw confusion spreading in the Ottoman lines, he made a bold decision. He released his elite cavalry. Charging in tight formation, they struck the Ottoman flank and went straight for the cannons. The Ottomans weren't prepared. With peasants charging from the front and knights from the side, panic spread. Hunyadi's troops captured the cannons and turned them on the Ottoman camp, including the Sultan's guard. The Ottoman army collapsed. Soldiers fled, and even Mehmed was wounded in the leg. The once invincible force was in full retreat. That night, what remained the army fled, abandoning their weapons and camps. The victory at Belgrade was complete, but the cost was high. In the aftermath, disease broke out. Hunyadi died 3 weeks later. Capistrano also passed away soon after. They didn't live to see the peace they had helped create. Still, their efforts stopped the Ottoman advance for 70 years. Across Europe, the news brought joy. Church bells, once rung as a call for prayer, became a symbol of victory. The noon bell tradition continues to this day, a lasting echo of the courage and unity that saved Belgrade in the summer of 1456.